Hello, and welcome to How to Fix Your T500 boiler. So the whole idea is you've got a T500 boiler that's broken, and you want to fix it. That's it. Now, I'm going to be using one of my old T500 boilers as an example. It is a bit knocked up. It had a slight decompression issue a few years ago, and I haven't used it since. The reason why I'm using this compared to my normal T500 is the fact that I've updated and altered how my T500 boiler works, so it won't be out of the stock out the factory, which is what you'll probably have, but this is. Now, the first thing to check is if you've got a light on the back. Now, some models don't have a switch, some models do have a switch, but it's not illuminated, so it depends on your model. I think I've noticed about 7 different T500 models out there so far. So you all know that. Now, if you do have an illuminated switch and it is illuminated, you know that you're getting electricity to your boiler. If you have got an illuminated and it's not on, or you don't have an illuminated switch, you can't check. And the first thing to do, if you're in the UK, is to check your 3-pin plug, your fuse in your 3-pin plug. Now, most European countries don't have a fuse in their plug, and I believe America do on the higher amped 13 amp or 240 volt areas. So if you do have a fuse in your plug, check it, because that's the first thing that could have blown. Now, outside of that, everything else is inside your boiler. So we need to strip that out. Wait. Right. Before we go any further, I must stress the fact that obviously I'm not telling you to open these up. Only open up something that's electrical if you know what you're doing and you're competent in doing it. Do not take my advice of saying these are what you can replace as I'm allowing you to, and it's safe to. Obviously, we're talking about mains electricity, things that could harm you, could kill you, could start a fire. So only open up if you know what you're doing and you are competent. Okay. If any doubt, speak to your brewing shop where you bought your boiler from, or an electrician. And please be careful, because obviously it is dangerous. All right, let's continue. Now, the one thing to warn you though is if you've got a split or a hole in your boiler and it's leaking water, while you could potentially find someone who can do stainless steel welding, I don't know whether or not it will be economical, or so you would need to work that out. If it's the heating elements themselves that have actually blown, then unfortunately that's it. You need to buy a new boiler. Those are actually welded onto the base, so it's not something you can replace at all. The rest of it you can replace. Unfortunately, Still Spirits do not sell the parts online, so it's not like you can go to them for spare parts. Check out, you've got eBay, Amazon for some of the parts. Check your local home brewing shop, because they might have some parts, or they might have old boilers that they can strip for parts. But ask around, really, unfortunately. So there we go. Right, let's get this on the floor and we can look inside it. Okay, now, you got the boilers split up into several areas. You've got the inner boiler here, which is where we get into it. We've got this outer ring, which removes it from the plastic base. But unfortunately, the plastic base is a real pain to get off an actual boiler because of the way it's dealt with the cables. So most of the time, you're having to squeeze your hand into this area. It shouldn't be a problem for most issues. Right, so let's just get that out. Here we go. And there we go. As you can see, it's a very small area and not a great deal to see. So what we've got a reset bar. Obviously, that's when it gets too hot. You're having to push it down. Just get that out of the way. And then inside here, you can see the thermal, or the thermostat. Now, this is the bit that you have to push down, and the tiny bit over here is called a thermal fuse. So we get a bit closer. We can then take a look. Now, the problem with this, as you can see, is the size. While I can get my hand in, it's quite awkward to be getting actually inside half this area. Now, the first thing that's probably going to be an issue is this thermostat that's there. Now, what this is, here's one, is it allows electricity to go from this pin to this pin. When this part here, which is resting on the boiler, detects where it goes too high. Now, this one is rated, I think, at 135 degrees Celsius, and I've seen them range between 120 to 135. When it gets to that temperature, it goes open circuit, so no longer allows electricity to go between the pins, and this little switch pops up. Now, if you push it down straight away, it will pop straight back again because it's still too hot. Most of these will or allowed to be reset at 80 degrees Celsius or below. And then once that's cool, you can then push this and it then allows electricity to flow again. These work really well, but they don't have a finite lifespan, and after a while they just break, so they need to be replaced. If you're lucky, you can get one like this, which actually has the screw and the thread built into it. So it literally is simple as unscrew, unscrew, and then you can screw them back on. But the vast majority I've seen have these standard spades on there, but no thread. So then you're either having to get a tap and die set to be able to make the holes and thread in there, or you can cut these circular spades off and then replace them with, I think it's 4.3 or 4.6 mil spades, which then push it straight onto here. So that's up to you. Now, the other thing to note is that there is heat sink transfer compound, like a white gooey stuff on the bottom of this, which allows the heat to transfer quicker. That will probably be a bit crusty, so you might need to get a small tube and put it on here, so that way it works well. Luckily, it's relatively cheap, but it's heat transfer compound. Now, the next part is here, and you can see it's underneath this sheath, and that's called a thermal fuse, which is one of these. Now, this will trigger at 200 plus Celsius, so this should never go. Now, I have seen a couple go, but it's very, very rare. So now, these can be bought on most electrical or electronics and hardware stores. They're quite commonly used on other products. And as you can see, that's just a small little nut that you unscrew. This little metal plate comes off and done. Now, outside of that, you have your heating elements. Now, this is like a 500 watt heating element, and this is a 1750 watt heating element. On this model that I've got, both of those are welded together and then you have a single point on both sides. Some of them have a separate little connector on both, and then it has then a piece of metal which is screwed onto both of them as like screw terminals. So they're separated, but say my one isn't, and yours might be different. The rest of them are quite simple. They're ordinary, either high temperature resistant wire with sheaths, or they've also then put ordinary cables in, and you can see here it's not got the fabric-y, but they put a sheath over it. And it's quite awkward to work inside it. So that's it, really. What I'm going to do is get my multimeter and then just show you how you can test if it's the heating element, because you should just be able to put the multimeter across here and then see if it's still working. The thermal fuse is a little bit fiddly because you actually have to unscrew it and then cut these cable ties off, pull the sheath away, and then you can put a multimeter across the actual thermal fuse to see if it's working, but the heating elements is a little bit easier. The first thing to do is take off the top wire that you can see goes to the heating element, and then unscrew that. Now, you'll have to apologise for my big hand getting in the way. The reason why we're taking this off is we want to make sure this is isolated so nothing's touching anything. So now that's off, we know those heating elements cannot be touching. So grab your multimeter and put on to continuity. So that way you can hear and see if it's touching. And you put one on one heating element and one on the other one. And what you should do, you'll again get a figure. You see I've got 25, so it shows it's touching. If I release, it shows not touching. So from that point alone, I can see that the heating elements are fine. Now, the problem is, because my model, both of the heating elements are soldered together, is that both that are working or one that's working? And I don't know, and I'm able to tell. If you have got one that's got individually connected, then you can undo them, the little joining plate, and then you can test both the 500 and 1750 watt heating element individually. Sadly, I can't do that. And that's it. There's not much else that can be changed in this. Some of your cables may get a little bit frayed, but they shouldn't realistically get damaged unless it really, really overheats in there, and then you've got some other bigger issue with that. So it'd be a good idea to get an electrician to have a look at it, because something is very, very wrong with that. They're really nice and simple. So yeah, I hope you found this helpful. See you next time.